Hi guys, welcome back to Murder in Retrograde. It has been a hot minute. I swear we're gonna stop saying this. We're gonna be on here way more coming now that our trips are out of the way and all of that.
Yeah, it was more like a hot month, but
but welcome back. There is so much to talk about. I'm so excited because we haven't been on here in so long and so much is happening in the true crime space. So we're just gonna hop right into it. So I'm Jenna.
I'm Brittany.
And this is Murder in Retrograde. Okay, so I did want to kind of start this out with a bit of a disclaimer, if you will, because I think you and I have both been very clear that we want things to change about, believing women and believing when they come out with their truths or their stories about abuse and all of this stuff. And so that is something you and I've felt very passionately about. But it's not always necessarily the case, the truth. I think it's actually probably a better statement to say, believe all victims. But
I think what bothers us the most is injustice, quite frankly. And it's all about getting justice. And if something has been done to you, you deserve your day in court. And at the same time, and we've mentioned this as well, people that are accused of things that they didn't do deserve their day in court, to defend themselves. And but this is a touchy subject, especially, with what's happened over the last few years and women coming out. And yes, we always want to believe women, but it's not. It's such a touchy subject, right? And consent is so touchy. I just watched an amazing show on Netflix called The Anatomy of a Crime, and it was the best I've ever seen somebody show consent and how foggy it is and how it can be misrepresented, but not necessarily in a nefarious way. Because
what did you say it was called? Anatomy of what?
It's called The Anatomy of a Crime on Netflix, and it's with Sienna Miller. Do you remember her? I love her.
Yes, I like her.
Oh, I can't believe I didn't tell you. I went to Las Vegas and I stayed in my hotel room and I binged this show. It was so good.
I'm excited.
So yes, of course, we always want to believe, even saying believe victims is hard because some people are always victims or think they're victims and that sort of thing. But what we're getting to is the Johnny Depp trial. And I think maybe beforehand, we should say what we think. I've always believed that it was not a great relationship, but I don't believe that Johnny Depp was abusive. And I think that she's mentally ill and created a lot of this. What do you think, Jenna?
I remember when it came out and I was like, and I honestly didn't believe it for a second. Like you said, I kind of was like, this is just a toxic, weird relationship. And I didn't put much into it. And then I didn't realize that it was gonna snowball the way that it has. And so I literally started really following it during this trial. I didn't follow the last trial in the UK. I remember hearing that he lost and I was kind of surprised. But I know that the proof of burden of proof is different there than it is here. And I think it's easier to convict there than it is here. So when I really started diving into this trial and looking at real evidence, I'm shocked that it's gotten this far. I'm glad he has his day in court. And I think the lawsuit, which I'm going to explain in a minute, is a bunch of bullshit. Essentially, I think he knows he will never see a dime from her and hopefully will never have to pay her a dime. It is all about getting the truth out there. He wanted this to be public for a reason.
Nobody wants to go through this sort of thing. And I think we should explain so they had a trial in the UK and now this trial is in Fairfax, Virginia. And Jenna, that's because they were on an airplane or something. And so it's federal.
No. So the Washington Post is in Virginia. And
that's right.
So that's why it's being held there, even though they're not a defendant in the case. I don't know what
it has to be in their jurisdiction.
But I think, And she tried to get it moved to LA, and I don't know what they said no for, but I think, it mostly is because the Washington Post is there. And then, so what's happening is she wrote this op-ed, which is opinion piece for anyone who doesn't know, in 2018. And the title was something like calling him a wife beater or abuse or something of that nature. And the whole thing is he's suing her for defamation. I can never say this freaking
defamation.
Word. Defamation. Thank you. But
she didn't name him.
She's right. So his name is not in there. But then, like 24 hours later, I forget which magazine came out and said, like, basically naming him from it. And it was that obvious is my point. It was so obvious it was about him. They didn't have to name him. And that's kind of like why this is going on, because it's called defamation by inference, I think. And so you're not an idiot to like read this and realize who it's about.
That's kind of scary though, because think if you said like, that girl we knew from school, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it could be a lot of different, that's kind of a slippery slope. So but I know he's so hell-bent on this because he has children and he had a long-term marriage where he's had a lot of ex-partners come forward and say he was never violent. So
yeah,
for his children's sake,
like to uphold,
and for work.
Yeah.
He's not going to get insured on a movie set if he's been convicted of something or this, he hasn't been convicted of anything, and even this wouldn't convict him, but it would put a big mark on him and he wouldn't work. As we've seen, he lost Pirates of the Caribbean. It already has.
Yeah. So that was like part of their case, is they're showing that he did lose Pirate 6 and he did lose opportunities. And because of this, because as some of the agency people would say, basically, if you have some sort of bad things following you, whether it's, a restraining order or the op-ed or just the allegation in general being out there, it's like, no one wants to touch you.
Yeah. Okay. So basically they were married. They divorced in 2016. She writes this op-ed in 2018. And the first trial, as we said, was in the UK, and that was Johnny suing the son because they had called him a wife beater, as Jenna said. So, and like we said, the terms in which how you have to prove something in a British court is entirely different. So they had that trial in the UK, and then also their divorce settlement, she promised a lump sum to give to the ACLU, correct, Jenna?
Well, so there was,
I know we'll talk about it in the future, but just
the premise is she asked for a certain amount and then she said, I don't want money. I'm going to donate the whole thing, half to the ACLU and half to a children's hospital. And
it was a big amount of money.
Got $7 million.
Yeah. Okay. So she promised she would give it all to charity.
$350.
Yeah. And then, so now Johnny is suing the Washington Post for the op-ed. And now what, Jenna?
A lot. I just want to give a little bit of background. And let me tell you, like, there has been literally like 2 or 3 weeks of trial. We're not going to touch on every little thing. We kind of just want to talk about some of the main points. I highly recommend not reading mainstream media about this and just watching the footage, because you're going to get so much more information, accurate information. Because I find because I've been watching every day live. And then when I read some of the things that, like, Daily Mail or whatever is writing, it's writing things as fact that are very clear. If you're watching, does not seem like fact. That's just my tidbit. But so something that I found really interesting, first of all, is the lawyer teams. I feel like they represent their people in the way that their dynamics are. It's very interesting. Like who's Heather? Amber Heard her team is very like bratty and snotty and has temper tantrums and
messes up all the time.
Like they get so flustered. Like the one guy, I don't even know his name, but he's like, I'm just trying to save, like, that's how he talks. And you're like, are you a professional? What is going on here?
I had to look him up because I was like, where is this guy from? He went to Stanford Law School. He has a beautiful resume. So just because you went to a good school does not mean you perform well. But he's also on national television.
No,
that's
totally.
Probably.
And everyone online is calling them the wish.com lawyers.
Exactly.
It's so funny. So they're a bit of a mess, honestly. They feel clumsy. It feels clumsy. And his team is very like put together. They're very like, it almost seems like a like core group of friends. They like all look like they love each and enjoy each other. And one specific woman that was sitting next to him, the beautiful brunette. So everyone was like speculating, like there's chemistry there. They're flirting. There's this and that and the other. So I looked into it. I don't have the title in front of me for some reason, but her job is to make sure the image of the defendant is good. She's like a PR person, essentially. She's there to make him look good, to humanize him, to make him seem like himself and not like a stoic, cold person like she is portraying herself to be, if that makes sense.
So in Hollywood, they would call that a fixer. If anybody's ever watched the show Ray Donovan, they're like, the Kardashians have the best ever. Publicists, they go in there and they know exactly what to do psychologically, and obviously it's working because I mean everybody noticed her anyway because she's beautiful, but gorgeous. They are like smiling at each other. But Johnny Depp's charming.
I have it in front of me, a reputation management and crisis communication. So sorry, I like fumbled there for a minute, but so everything she's doing is on purpose, you know, like the touching, the like, even when Amber was on the stand, so they've all kind of rotated of who's going to be in front of the microphone calling objections or whatever. And when Amber went up, she is that person. And I think again, it's on purpose because they've kind of created this chemistry or this look like they're flirting. And then she's the one objecting when Amber is doing stuff and throwing her off. And there was a behind the scenes thing where like Amber was something was going on and Amber wasn't doing anything, but she was on the stand. And Camille, her name's Camille. She like reached over him and like put his coffee in front of him and like was like grabbing his shoulder and stuff. And it was like right in front of her. And she's like
oh yeah, I can see it getting to Amber. It's working.
And I'm more than sure she will be the one to cross-examine Amber because they want a reaction out of her. So, and then Ben Chu is the guy that we all look like he's the cutest, most adorable thing ever. And he's right next to him. And he seems to they have like a great dynamic, but I don't have his history in front of me, but I just thought she was important because it's on purpose. Everything we're seeing that's going on there is on purpose.
Well, just the dynamic, you know, when you look at them, like his attorneys are sitting back, they look very confident and calm, and her attorneys half the time they're like, do you have it? Where's that paper? Is this one it? It's just
and the judge is like, hi, this is already in evidence, like please keep in control of your stuff, like this is not my job. I'm convinced
she's on vacation. She's not at a conference, she's in Hawaii. She's like, I need a break.
She's over it, I think. Poor woman. Okay, so how much have you seen live? Did you just watch him or did you, because I want to know what witnesses should like go with first.
I watched him, I watched her, all of her testimony.
Okay.
And I saw a little bit of his bodyguard and the psychologist, but not all of it. That's it.
Okay, so I'm just going to give some highlights here. So one of the witnesses that went was Kate James. She was Amber Heard's assistant, and she basically tells the story of how terrible Amber was and how she would berate her verbally. And Kate James basically was in this position because it gave her flexibility to be with her child, because I'm sure, as you can attest because you've been in this industry, that like those personal assistants do not have normal hours. And so I think it was worth it for her at that time to take a pay cut and deal with a crazy person so that she could be with her child. And she says that she had a domestic abuse story that Amber knew about, and she's now saying that Amber is using that story. So she's taken Kate James's incident and then she's shifted a few things to make it personal, and she's saying Johnny Depp did that to her, and that was Kate James saying like, no, that was my story.
That's a specific personality disorder, but I'll let you keep going.
Oh no, I want you to talk about that for sure. So, she goes on to talk about how one time Amber spit in her face for asking for a raise. Like, just nothing but terrible things about Amber. And then when she was asked about her interactions with Johnny Depp, she said he was always gracious and nice to her. And he would like hang out with her kid and be very kind to her son and all these things.
And she has no reason to say that. Did they happen to say anything about why she was able to say these things? Because I was an assistant. I signed NDAs. I can't talk about anything. How was she able to say all of that?
I was wondering the same thing. I have no idea. I wonder if it's null and void if you've been subpoenaed. Like, that would be my guess.
Which is, I mean, a lot of celebrities are probably real scared because that's nothing. Spitting in someone's face. I have seen so much worse. But when she was describing her day, and I mean, she was clearly being abused by Amber. Yeah. She was awful to her.
Yeah. So just terrible. And I think these personal assistants get a real sense of who this person is because they're with them all day long doing their stuff. So I think they have a real view of what's going on. As we're someone who
probably better than anyone.
That's what I was going to say, more so than someone who's maybe coming in to clean the house once a week or whatever. I think she's going to have a real thumb on the pulse of their situation.
Definitely.
So it was so interesting. So a CAA talent agent who was also Lady Gaga's old fiance, which was wild. Right. Like, it's so wild to hear all these like famous people like in this whole thing, but he was on the stand his was not on the stand. Sorry. His deposition was played as the same was with Kate James, but he went on to just say, his relationship with both of them. He had a relationship with both of them, but he testified to her and Elon Musk's relationship and how she told him that Amber Heard told the talent agent guy, his name's, I don't have it in front of me, Christian something. She told him that Elon was just a filler and that she really missed Johnny Depp. And I think she was just basically using him, which I think we all knew.
Well, and another thing is she had only been with women before Johnny.
Yes.
She had long-term relationships.
Looks just like Johnny Depp. She's like a girl.
Oh, really?
Johnny Depp. She is a girl version of Johnny Depp. It is wild. She wears
is like the girl she's with right now?
No, this is so her marriage before when Johnny and Amber met on The Rum Diary. Mm-hmm. They were both married. He was with Vanessa Paradis and she was with her wife. And I forget her something Van Rees. I don't have it, but she's got long, stick straight black hair, dark brown hair. She wears like the cool, funky hats like Johnny Depp does. She's got cool, like she's an artist, so she's got this like very spiritual, cool, like artistic thing about her. She reminds me of him so much. It's wild.
But she was never with guys. She was always with girls. Right?
Supposedly. Yeah.
Yeah. But okay. I think it's just important to point out.
100%. And then that relationship ended because there was domestic abuse charges against Amber in 2009 with this woman. And she wasn't ever like, she was never fully charged. And I forget what the legality of it was, but it was very clear Amber Heard was the one abusing the ex-wife or had a situation where there was abuse there. Which I don't know that she's on, well, I guess she wouldn't be on the witness list, but I feel like they should have called her for like some sort of showing a history of violence.
But they can't unless she is in the case. Like, for example, they probably want to bring that in, like the Kate Moss thing. So nobody has brought up Kate Moss, so they can't subpoena Kate Moss because
they did.
No, I know I'm going to say that because they have their own history of violence because they ruined that hotel room, blah, blah, blah. But when Amber Heard was on the stand, she said, I remembered, and she said Kate Moss, and his attorney went yes to the other attorneys because she just opened a can of worms. Now they can subpoena Kate, anyone that saw their relationship. So I think that's why she's this ex-wife is not being brought to the stand. I don't know that for a fact, but that's what I would imagine.
That's a good point. That's a great point. So I just want to go over some of these before we move on to him and her. But the officers that were called to the penthouses when there was alleged abuse on Amber, they came not once but twice and walked through the house, talked to Amber, tried to talk to her friends that were there. No one would talk to them, but they said that they saw zero signs of any sort of like physical altercation in the home, and that there was no signs of anything on Amber at all. Like there was 4 cops total that said no, and they were shown pictures of her with like that little mark on her cheekbone, and they were like, do you see a bruise on her? And they were like, no, this is consistent with her crying, and she was flush. And they all said that. And then the doorman for the penthouse building was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my whole life. So his deposition, he's in a car and he's so fucking over it. He is so over it. He literally, like, at one point was like, I don't know, like, this was 6 years ago. I just want to move on with my life. Like, I didn't see anything. Like, he was so funny, but he was telling a story about how ridiculous Amber was, because there was like they had dogs, and there was dog scratches on like the bottom of a door. And Amber and her sister or friend, I forget who it was, like asked him to come sweep the penthouse because they were concerned someone was trying to break into the house. And him telling the story, he was like, I couldn't believe they were so like ridiculous that they didn't realize this was the dogs. Those were the dogs. Like, he was so pissed.
Oh my gosh, she sounds insane.
And then at one point he vapes and he's driving. He's like, cause he was in the car. So he just starts driving and he's vaping, and like, it's so funny. His name was Alejandro Romero. He goes by Alec, but he's on TikTok now. So
of course.
So it's so funny. But so he was kind of, and then afterwards the judge was like, because they all have to like keep their face on while the jury leaves or whatever. And after the jury left, she goes, and she's like, and then Elaine, who's Amber Heard's lawyer, was like, I'd never seen anything like it. Or she agreed, or the judge said, I've never seen anything like that in my life. Like,
oh my gosh, that is so funny.
Okay, so the more important people that have testified thus far, both sides have put on a forensic psychologist. So my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is forensic psychologist means their responsibility is to the court and the justice system, and not necessarily a party, even though they're being paid by each party. The forensic part of it comes from their obligations to the justice system, in a sense.
That's interesting. I've never heard that. Usually forensic psychology has to do with like after the fact. So it's usually like after death, like you decide you can analyze different personalities and things like that. I think that's just how they were hired. But Dr. Curry was hired by Johnny's team.
So Dr. Curry was hired by Johnny's team, and Dr. Hughes was hired by Amber's team, but they both testify that their obligation was to the court and not
always
to their sides.
Always, a therapist has to, that's their vow of oath that they will.
And she was so clear with talking to the jury and like making them understand. Like, she wasn't using, I mean, she was, but she was, I guess, in a sense, dumbing it down for us people that were watching. Like, I felt like I learned so much just listening to her. And she just did a really great job on the stand, and she didn't let them bully her. Like, she would be like, no, that's not correct. Actually, would you like me to tell? Like, she was very much like standing up to her.
She was an earth sign.
She was a little bit bullying. But she testified that Amber has borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder. Do you want to explain each of those?
Sure.
Since you're definitely better at that than I am.
From the very beginning, this was my favorite part of psychology, was abnormal psychology, obviously. And I remember when we were learning about personality disorders, histrionic was the most fascinating. And it's fairly rare, and I think it's more common in women. But a histrionic personality disorder, these people have a discomfort in situations where they're not the center of attention. Like that drives them crazy. They have inappropriate, sexually seductive, provocative behavior. They have rapidly shifting emotions. So sometimes they're misdiagnosed as bipolar. They have here's a word I can't say, dramatization and exaggerated expressions. If you notice her facial expressions, and they're easily influenced by outside circumstances. And I noticed that a lot, like the people she surrounds her with. And it seems like she just surrounds herself with yes people who fuel this. And then borderline personality disorder is so similar. They have put all their efforts toward avoiding real or imagined abandonment. They're very focused on abandonment. They have intense and very unstable relationships with their family, which is not so much her. She's pretty close to her family. They have impulsive behaviors, unstable self-image, mood swings. Like Curry said, borderline personality disorder represented an unstable personality, alert to rejection, with little access to self-regulation, and marked by a lot of anger, cruelty towards people less powerful, concerned with image, attention seeking, and prone to externalizing blame. A lot of suppressed anger that may explode outwards. So nothing is ever their fault. It's always everyone else, hence spitting on people, thinking you're better than people. You're up here, they're down there. So I almost think she's one or the other of those, but they're serious personality disorders. They're no joke.
So the one thing that I thought was interesting, and I can't remember if she said it or if I heard it, or if I read it or heard it somewhere else, but they were saying with histrionic, and you nailed it kind of when you were saying it, was a lot of the sexuality tied to it. They use their sexuality to get what they want, which I kind of feel like is how she got him to be with her in the first place.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
She's beautiful. She's crazy, but she's beautiful.
Yes, definitely. Especially with some of the things that we'll get into that she did on the stand. And all of this was determined because she was seen by Dr. Curry. She was given a psychological test like MMPI, and she was with her for I forget how many hours, but she kept mentioning how many hours she was with her. So I think it was a lot.
I think it was definitely a substantial amount, and she did it. It seemed very similar hours with her psychologist and Dr. Curry. They both seemed to give similar testing and same kind of sit down time. But I personally felt listening, Dr. Curry seemed more thorough and tried to make sure she ran tests to prove that whether Amber was lying or not. And she also talked about how the language that Amber would use is, I think she described it as flowery or like Disney character-esque. And it's
like a princess.
Yeah. But the
only thing that I thought was a little bit strange is Dr. Curry, obviously she was hired by Johnny Depp, which you hire these witnesses, and that's kind of what they do for a living, and they get paid an enormous amount of money, way more than they do at their regular job for being in court. And prior to her doing any sort of evaluation, Johnny brought her to his house. The attorneys were all there. They had wine, they had dinner. So she kind of hung out with them prior to all of that. And I mean, they're allowed to do that. They're not they're not treating them, they're a witness, but still it's like, do you really want to be hanging out?
Amber's team brought that up, and her response was due to scheduling and him necessarily not needing to be in her building for privacy purposes or whatever. Even though she said she does clear out her office, like when Amber came into her office, she clears out her team so that it's very private. But she kind of said that was the reasoning. She went to them. And
because normally you would meet at the attorney's office, but they would bring in dinner, and they would do so something
she just said it was more of an interview than anything. She's like, there was food there, but it wasn't. I think it could go both ways, totally, and it's all about planting those seeds of doubt. So, and then moving on to the other side was Dr. Hughes, who Elaine kept calling Dr. Curry. Because Dr. Curry was sitting, because she's a expert witness, they're allowed to be in the courtroom. Unlike, if if a friend was testifying, they cannot. And I'm sure she did it so she can rebuttal later. I feel like that'd be the only reason that she would be in there watching. So Dr. Hughes basically comes out and says she believes everything Amber Heard said. She doesn't believe she has personality disorders. And I thought what was really interesting is when Johnny Depp's team was kind of questioning her on it, they basically insinuated that she was just taking Amber Heard's word for it and wasn't really following up. And like when she was reading the reports and all the documents that she has, that she was picking and choosing what to believe. Mm-hmm. So it seems like she had and I'm sure they both do, like they're, like you said, they're paid by this, and they have to argue both sides. Like they each are going to argue that what side, but the thing that was, and it's so funny because I think I told your sister this, like we were DMing about this, but when I was watching her, I was infuriated because she kept saying she and him when she was describing scenarios, not anything to do with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, but just scenarios of interpersonal violence or domestic abuse or all this stuff. She kept saying she and him. And I'm glad that his lawyers ended up bringing up, like, you don't think abuse happens to men? Like, why would you use those pronouns when you were talking in scenarios versus like about these people? And she said it was because of this case calling for that, but it was kind of infuriating to watch because I feel like if you're a juror and you're hearing she and him, it's almost being like, it's almost like subliminal, like, placement. I don't know.
But she did that on purpose for sure. And I agree with you that it's unfair because it just takes your mind there versus saying partner one, partner two, because it could be same sex. It could be a woman beating a man. It could be anything.
And then they also said that she has never testified on behalf of a man in a heterosexual relationship. She's never once testified on the man's behalf. It's always been on the woman's behalf. And it was crazy. Like I saw an article that she actually defended, and I don't know the ins and outs and legality because there is, people do this when their life's in danger, but she like just was in a courtroom on the side of a woman who murdered her husband. So she definitely is always kind of has taken in her courtroom stance the woman's side of things.
I wonder if that's just statistical though, because I would imagine, well, I don't know, but more women are abused than men. So, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. So that was just the things that they brought up. Did you watch her at all?
The Dr. Hughes?
Yeah.
No, I missed Dr. Hughes.
I wish you would have,
I'll go back and watch it.
She was just so aggravating to watch because I felt like she was combative a bit and like,
that's never good.
It was like, it was not great. So, those were kind of one other top witness. So Tara Roberts is the house manager for Johnny Depp's homes, I believe in Australia is the Bahamas. Yeah. And so she takes care of everything on, like she lives on the island, she takes care of all of his stuff there. And she testified, or I forget now if it was a deposit. No, it was a Zoom call because she's in the Bahamas. And she basically testified that she was there witnessing Amber attacking Johnny Depp and he did nothing. Like he kept trying to remove himself from the situation. And when he didn't, she got in the middle of it and took him away and put him into a different building. And the security took Amber and like they had to physically separate him. And she said that he had a mark, I think, on the bridge of his nose from something that had happened. So kind of interesting that there's witnesses saying, no, dude, I saw her, attacking him and scratching at him and coming at him, and he had marks on him and he did nothing.
So since she was Zooming from the island, she's still currently his house manager.
Yeah. And that's something that they obviously bring up.
I mean, I was a house manager too. It's the hardest job in the universe. And everything about them. You buy their underwear, you stock their refrigerator. They act like you're not there. So they do fight in front of you and you see things you don't want to see. And but what I'm saying is like, she could be on his side because she's still being employed by him. But at the same time, that's such a hard job that typically you get to the point where you don't love your employer that much. And she can say whatever she wants, but she's saying that it was not him. So
yeah,
it just seems like everyone that knew her just was like, she is so crazy. Like they couldn't handle her, like across the board. There was nobody that came forward on his side that was like, she was wonderful.
No.
He didn't do anything. Or
no, everyone has said, no, she's just this girl crazy. That girl crazy. Yeah. And you know what though? So, and you saw this. So he testified. So getting to kind of him being on the stand. First, his sister took the stand before him. She testified to what he also testified was the violence that they were subjected to as children from his mom. And he went into a lot of detail about how she would name call them and make them pick out switches, and, you know, she abused them. And his coping mechanism was to retreat, do whatever she asked, get out of the way, like didn't, you know, ever fight back or,
it was difficult to even listen to. And then she was a drug addict and she had these things called nerve pills. Who was that? Who the hell knows what that was? And she would say to him as a child, bring me my nerve pills. And he started to notice, oh, she does that when she's upset. So he started taking them because he felt so awful because he was basically taking care of his mother. And that really gives you is eye-opening and as to why he is drawn to drugs. He does self-medicate. His sister just totally backed up everything he said. This mother just sounded so sick, an addict, mentally ill, and just awful to Johnny and his sister.
And it's crazy that he still had a relationship with her his entire life, or her entire life. Yeah. Up until the day she died, he took care of her.
Yep.
And it's just interesting.
Childhood trauma is quite the trauma bond.
Right. And it's like, and I forget the terminology, but when you're sympathizing with your abuser, right? Yeah. Like it's so interesting. But I feel like we see this with women and their dads and dynamics, and then they find a husband who's just like the abusive asshole dad. And I feel like it was kind of that cycle of happening with him. And like, that's, I think, this darkness that kind of like drew him in with her. It's like,
it's one of the number one things that therapists see and talk about is that whatever childhood trauma you had as a child, you recreate it because you want to fix it. So he's finding women like his mother, or a woman like his mother who's unstable, who's crazy, because he wants to fix it with her because that will make him feel whole for everything he lost with his mom. It's just classic psychology.
And I'm sure it's subconscious, but she came into his life, and he and her both kind of make it sound like he separated from Vanessa first, and then, but it kind of seems like their relationship started very much on set of the Rum Diary, and then probably led to him separating from Vanessa, allegedly. I don't know, but that's kind of the vibe I was getting. What from his testimony stands out to you the most?
I mean, his childhood just really seemed awful, and it made me understand the outbursts that they show of videos of him, because never does he seem violent to me, but he seems like a little kid. And so, and then also, like, it was very strange. He talked about their beginning of their relationship and how she would remove his boots and things like that. And it just pretty much all of it seemed like it was a mother-child relationship, you know, that was just from the start toxic.
Yeah. And then he like went on to kind of, when he was talking, so they refer to over and over again, because it's the most serious thing that happened was Australia, is when he lost his finger. And by the way, I've seen a picture of it and it is gnarly. Like, I always thought that it was just kind of, it was like, it's like gouge. It's like the crazy, it's so gross. But anyways, he like, for sure his finger is gone. Well, the tip. But listening to him tell the story and his body language, and he's doing the things that he's saying he's doing, and he comes off like so authentic. When he's telling his stories, and he's actually like, oh, can I get up and show, like, he was very much, and I'm sure there's a terminology you can tell me, but like when people are like recalling, when it happened, there's certain things that happen with their body language or whatever. And essentially they're fighting. She never lets him leave. So his coping mechanism when his abuse with his mom was to leave. And Amber would not allow him to leave. He would be like, let me go. We need space. And she would fight him on it and wouldn't let him escape situations. So he says he was sitting on the bar. His hand was like on the corner, kind of like this. And she's pissed off because he's drinking. Because yes, has serious addiction issues with drugs and alcohol. That is not a secret.
From the time she met him.
100%. So she allegedly pissed off about him drinking or whatever. Throws a bottle of, I think, vodka at him, doesn't hit him, like flies by his ear, hits the wall. So she picks up a handle of vodka and fucking flings it at him. And that's when it explodes on the bar and cuts his finger off. Like, and the audio from like when security comes in, so there's a doctor there, there's a security guard that's no longer alive. And Amber, you can hear her like screaming and freaking out. And the doctor's like, we need to give her something to calm down. And Johnny's got to get to either trying to find the finger, and they're trying to get him to a doctor. And let me just point out that they say to give her Seroquel, which is an antipsychotic. That's what they're saying to give her. So typically you would do Ativan, Xanax, something to just calm somebody down, but they go straight to an antipsychotic, which is very telling. That's a very good point. It goes to the doctor. They say, what happened? And he says he slammed his hand into like a accordion door or something, which again is not uncommon for abuse victims to lie about their injuries. Like
they usually do.
Yeah. No one, and I would think, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but I feel like men more so too are like, I'm not admitting that my wife is beating me. Like, it's so not talked about, and like not as talked about as women victims. So I think that plays a part in it, I would assume. But he told two people that, he slammed his hand in, and then she's saying he cut his own finger off. It's like, there's so many stories. It's insane.
Which that is crazy to me, because above all else, music is his life. He's a musician. He didn't ever want to be an actor. He always wanted to be a musician. A musician is not going to mess with their hands, even if they're on drugs, like that.
It's like it's like a plastic surgeon. You think they're going to, the money makers in a sense. And that was his passion. His passion and his love was music.
Yeah.
So yeah. Oh, that was the other thing. The doctor said they knew he was telling the truth, or he said, and then they kind of cut him off, but you could hear it. What he was trying to say is that the doctor responded that was what did he say? Like a volatile injury or something like that. Like something, which insinuated like, bigger,
I know what you're trying to say, like an extreme injury.
It was something where he kind of called him out.
Explosive.
And was like, something to that effect. And I think they objected or whatever, but it's telling that even the doctor was like, no, you're not telling me the truth. So things that piss people off. And I think these are the things that I'm talking about, media picking up things. He has a very colorful vernacular. And I'm going to just say this, and I've told you this, like, he also, I think, identifies more with being like from London and European kind of culture than from here. I think
I'm pretty sure he's lived in France longer than he's lived here.
Probably. And so he, again, like my husband, not from Europe, but he's not from here. And he used to say CUNT as like bro. It's like,
oh, that's right. You told me that.
It's not the word that we use here. It is like, it's like, it's light and funny. Like, I remember when we first were together, I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like,
Australians too, because when I traveled, I would hear it and I was like, whoa. Cause I mean, that's a great word in my opinion. I love it, like in comedy and stuff like that. And it's hysterical the way they use it, because they use it like a friend, like a term of endearment.
Yeah. So kind of putting that out there. And then also like, he, I guess, is a big fan of Monty Python, who also does I've never watched it, but from what I can gather, do you know about Monty Python?
Oh yeah. It's totally like, his.
satirical kind of, yeah. So he said things like calling her a whore, and she's let me see. So there was an argument where he said or he was saying at the end, I was broken. I thought the only answer is here. Take my blood. That's all I've got left. It's like some of the things he was saying during their fight. And then he called her and malicious, evil, and vindictive. See you next Tuesday. And he said that she had an obsession with herself and was so desperate for success and fame. I think towards the end, he started realizing he was a pawn in her game. It breaks my heart because I feel like he loved her and like wanted to be with her. And in my personal opinion, I think she had a game plan the whole time.
It sounded like total love bombing. She would sit him down and take his boots off. And like, yeah, she completely love bombed him and then became crazy.
Oh yeah. And, didn't do a prenup, wouldn't do a postnup. That's what, okay, sorry, I'm all over the place, but that was what led to Australia supposedly was the bringing up of a postnup. And that's what sent her into a rage. And then kind of going back, so she wouldn't let him leave. And then that's when Dr. Curry was saying that's when her fear of abandonment would like kick in. And that's why she wouldn't let him leave, thus creating this like storm. There's all kinds of videos you can watch. I mean, there's the one that's been played 1,000 times, which I feel like is so stupid. He's pissed. The day after his mom died, she's trying to film him and he's like slamming cabinets. Yeah. And he like pours the mega pint of wine and he's like, you want to see crazy? I've got crazy. And he's like filling up a glass of wine. And
he wasn't even being crazy. And she's totally instigating.
Totally. She's like, well, nothing happened. Like her voice like changed. Like, well, what happened? And then she's like, nothing happened this morning. It's so telling to listen to the way her language shifts and changes when they're recording.
And manipulative she's putting her phone up and recording. He has no idea. She knows. So she uses a sweet voice and she doesn't say any of that crazy stuff. And then he's like, what are you doing? You're recording? Like, that's so wrong.
And at the end, because he throws her phone. Yeah. And at the end, she goes and picks it up and she's laughing. She thinks it's all games. So when he was on the stand, he said, clearly I was having a bad time. I did assault a couple of cabinets, but I did not touch Miss Heard. And then he said, was he
so great?
So he was asked, were you, if he was drunk when the video was taken? And he said, you poured yourself a mega pint of red wine, correct? And he goes, a mega pint? And he started laughing. And he said, I poured myself a large glass of wine. I thought it was necessary.
My favorite was when somebody asked him what happened after he left. And he said, I don't know. I was no longer there.
It's responsive.
Stupid question. What happened after you left? He's very smart.
One of my favorite parts is when they allowed, which I don't know why this was allowed. They were going through all the tabloid things. And he was like, this is hearsay, is it not? Because he like learned what hearsay was by this point. And because he was getting called hearsay and objections and all those things. But so the quote that he wrote, I forget who to, but this is where people got a little offended. He says, I have no mercy, no fear, and not an ounce of emotion or what I once thought was love for this gold digging, low level, dime a dozen, mushy, pointless, dangling, overused, flappy fish market. I can only hope that karma kicks in and takes the gift of breath from her. Sorry, man, but now I will stop at nothing.
That he wrote to Paul Bettany, an actor.
That's what I thought so too.
An English actor. Sure. But it's like his best friend. There's so many text messages. And if anybody out there can think about letting their text messages with their best friend be shown, people are going to think you're insane. Like the stuff we say to each other. Oh my God. It just doesn't seem fair.
No, it doesn't seem fair because things are so taken in jest, but this is the world we live in now. Anything you say is like, can literally be held against you. So sorry, I know this is a lot, but he went through a lot of really great, like, also I'm a bit of I love behind the scenes type of stuff. I've always have. So when he was getting into like just his career and stuff, it felt like a movie. I was just like, so like enthralled in watching
him.
It
was very interesting.
And the people he surrounds himself with. And that's the other thing. They keep trying to connect the dots to he was friendly or doing drugs with or whatever with Marilyn Manson, which is smart on their part because Marilyn Manson is in the news right now for very terrible, sadistic things. Yeah. But I think they're making a bigger deal out of their relationship than it really was. Or I feel like we would see text messages or interactions between them. So it's almost like
I think they just occasionally use drugs together or would sell each other drugs because they both do drugs, but they don't seem similar at all. And it didn't seem like they were that close other than that.
And I think Johnny Depp was in his music video. I think that's the other
I'm sure they played music together.
So that's a gist of what he was on the stand for 3 days, so there's a lot. The one thing and how I think it ended, if I remember correctly, they played a clip and in it she's berating him, telling him, tell the world I, Johnny Depp, a man, I'm a victim too of domestic violence. And when his lawyer said, and what did you respond? He said, yeah, I am. And it was just like a mic drop moment to like hear her being such a bitch. And he's like, no, like I am. Like,
like the video when she's saying to him, oh, you're such a baby or something like that. She says, I didn't punch you, I hit you. Like there's a difference. And acting like it's totally fine for her to hit somebody because she's the female and he's the male, which is wrong.
That was the other thing. So he testified to a situation where she was attacking him and he tried to like kind of bear hug her to keep her from, lashing out or whatever. And they must have like headbutted during that. And he says that she immediately was saying her nose was broken. And he's like, it was kind of red. He's like, but there was nothing. And then she was like holding a tissue and being all dramatic. And he was like, he knew something was up. And he said he followed her around until she disposed of the tissue. And he picked it up and he said it was nail polish.
That is really scary. You just reminded me, I'm sure you've seen the clip of her when she blows her nose on the stand and people are saying
she's doing
coke or posing for a picture. Or there's one other theory that I heard that's very possible. There's it's like smelling salts, but actors use it when they have to have a crying scene and they do put it in a tissue. And so they'd like blow their nose and it immediately makes your eyes water. And she used that on the second day because everybody was talking about on the first day she was crying, but there were no tears. So
there was two separate moments. There was the moment where she was, because she literally goes like this with the tissue and shoves it up
and she
her
pauses
nose.
And then
she does,
and then she goes like this.
So something's going on, I think. But then there's a separate time where she was holding it and she pauses and you see the flash. You see and hear the flash. And then she like
she paused for a picture.
It's so crazy. So she comes on the stand and I don't know about you, but actually we were texting and I was like, I cannot. It was,
I couldn't believe my eyes. I've never seen such bad acting in my life.
So bad.
Actually, in her movies, the acting is just as bad. But I was like, wow, I thought she would have really, really practiced. And you can tell she did, but oh my God. And then she starts reciting lines from movies. And I was just like,
because I've been following this whole thing because it did feel like she was quoting things, but then when you put it side by side, it's not really, but it does feel like she's taken ideas from.
No, she takes verbatim the thing with Johnny, when he looks at you, the sun shines on you. So
if you go back, because everybody saw that and everybody thought that, but there's no clip of her saying, she says there's like a warm sun or something like that, or a glow, but it seems similar, but when they actually pulled it up, because you will not find one side by side of her.
That's what I found.
Saying that, of her videoing saying it.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. It was a TikTok. Maybe I know some people have messed with them, like the one, like somebody made that longer. For example, the one of her where it looks like she's pausing. Somebody on social media made that longer because I watched the original clip and it's short. She still does it, but she goes like this and it's like harder to tell.
So when I was looking, I couldn't find her actually saying, it was like similar, but it wasn't verbatim the what she says in Mr. Ripley. It's like, it's similar, but send it to me. But yeah, no, there were other things like from an old movie, something about cutting off the hand they thought came from Mildred or something like that. And then there was another one. Oh, the carpet supposedly came from 28
I read
something
that.
or other. 28 days or something with Sandra Bullock, the 28 in it. So there was a lot of like speculation that she's pulling ideas from places and then like making them her own.
It certainly seems like it.
But the stories were just painful to listen to. She didn't really, and I don't know if you noticed this too, but she never really finished like a sentence.
No, she was all over the place.
She would start and then she would like I feel like she almost thought like, oh, I better go into more detail about this. And then she would like go off on some random dirty carpet thing. And
she was
then
so in her head and she was looking up. And that's usually like when you're trying to create memories or when you're trying to create something that didn't happen. It's in your imagination, you're creating it in your imagination. And if you look down, supposedly that's a recall from memory. Your eyes go down. So she's looking up the whole time.
On that same thing, I forget who it was, but there was a lady of body language person saying, so like when Johnny Depp was talking about the bar and he's actually in his positions that he was doing. So on the flip side, when she was saying he was pulling my hair, typically someone would reach back to where they're being pulled, right? And that's what she was going like this. He was
like she was doing
hair. Yeah. And there was like a couple times she stammered over her words. Like she was saying something like he was going to do it, but she said I instead of he. Like there's so many like.
Her subconscious was not her friend that day because she kept messing up words and oh man, it was riveting.
It was wild because there was two stories that are so disturbing. And the fact that like one, people say she pulled from Gone Girl, which is she says he bent her over the bar and essentially assaulted her with a alcohol bottle,
right?
Which TikTok sleuthers, by the way, that I've seen said from the pictures the only bottle that was in the picture was like a Maker's Mark and she would have died.
That's not gonna work
because it's like this big. So
she would have died. I know they showed the two bottles and I was like, neither one of those are gonna work. Or they would have something on them to show that it was not working.
You would have such serious injuries, you would have to go to the fucking hospital.
Yes.
So that, and then the Coke cavity search story.
Oh God.
I was just like, I don't understand. Oh, and then she said something. There was something where she was making it sound like she doesn't do Coke and she's never doing it. But if you go back to her reports with the psychologist, it clearly says she was addicted to Coke.
Yeah. So Coke, like, MDMA, all that stuff. She was high at their wedding.
A mess. Oh yeah. That was on the menu of the wedding.
It was dancing, drinks, and drugs. And his little kids were there, but anyway,
a whole other situation. So yeah, it was, oh, and the other thing that I found, I think it was the second day, she was talking about how generous Johnny was and how she never wanted to accept his gifts. And she would never take his credit card. She would never do this.
She felt so uncomfortable with the gifts.
Allegedly, she rejected her first engagement ring, made him buy her a different one. And there's like joking pictures of him wearing it in photo shoots because she wouldn't wear it.
Wow.
She asked him to put up all her friends in his penthouses, as where she's saying he offered and just made them do it. And in his testimony, he was like, well, her friend Rocky was out and she asked me if they could stay there for a little while. And I said, yeah, I guess it was meant for my sister, but she could stay there, whatever. So it's like she slowly was just like getting her claws in him, but I would never, but I'll drive the Range Rover. I'll live in your penthouse, I'll fly on your jet, but like I can't.
Yeah.
So she was I got my mother-in-law into this, and she was like, I couldn't watch her. I couldn't do it. It was so bad.
Yeah. I had to take breaks too. It was a lot.
It just was like an energy suck, big time.
Yes.
And then that's what I was telling my mother-in-law. I was like, we could barely watch her for 2 days. Imagine living with this person day in and day out. No wonder he was spiraling and his drinking and drugs. He was like, I need to escape from you. Like, you're crazy. So let me see a couple of highlights with her. So she had this whole story about how he beat the shit out of her, and she had to go to James Corden the next day. She had 2 black eyes and a broken nose and yada, 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 yada. So
and she had to wear heavy matte lipstick to cover all of the bruises.
So her in 2019, I guess, for the other trial, her makeup artist had a statement saying, this is not true. I was the one that did her makeup. There was no bruises, and it's totally bullshit. And then the other thing there's pictures with her with some marks and some black eyes, but allegedly she got a nose job, a very slight nose job that could very much give bruising in the eyes and in the nose. And then she's also, if you see pictures over the years, she's clearly gotten filler
and Botox
in her lips and around here to like fill it, like if you look at her cheekbones and stuff. So all of these bruises, and I'm sure this will all come up and cross, was most likely stuff from that.
Yeah.
And what a psychotic brain, by the way. Like, I'm gonna take pictures of this. And then the first day I think he testified, it was like the day everyone was freaking out because it was the poop story.
Yeah. Amber Turd. Her Wikipedia was Amber Turd for a little while the other day.
It was, yes. I saw it yesterday. I was like, oh my God. But yeah, she admitted it to his, and this is the thing, yes, the security people work for him. But when you look at the pedigree of the security people that are like military and like serious, I don't see them lying about this kind of stuff. I find them to be very believable. And so when he says, she told me her practical joke went wrong, and then thus it's shit on the bed, she shit. And then she put the covers over it, by the way, so that he would just slide into bed into the poo.
No, that is really weird. That is so weird.
Okay. So, what I was saying is, going back to his financial advisor had testified. So he came on to testify like about his financial situation and a couple things, and how he had a game plan to get Johnny back on like on track, because he basically was spending too much money.
But also he had money managers that mismanaged his money years back. So he lost a lot, but he was spending frivolously, but not necessarily with how much money he had been making. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So he testified, which I thought was the most interesting. So he dealt with the divorce settlement stuff, and he said it started off as 4 million, and he said, and then in his verbiage, and it's like a proper older man, like he's not using he was saying her demands then would change, and it kept getting more and more to the fact that they were finally at 7 million, and she wanted to pay no taxes. He needed to absorb all the taxes.
Wow.
And he was trying to be like, do you know how much money that is, like in taxes? And then he also Johnny had to absolve any, what's the verbiage, like mutual expenditures between the two of them needed to be absolved by him also. And she would only and this was like, she basically threatened to, like, this is when the threats of like, you give me what I want or I'm going to the press kind of started. And she started demanding also that she wanted the Range Rover, and she wanted like a house or something. He just made it sound like, he testified her demands were like out of control. And when everything was settled, they made $100,000 check in her name to each of the foundations that she said she was going to donate her money to. And he got reprimanded by her, not Johnny Depp. The financial guy got reprimanded by Amber Heard's team, saying, no, you pay it directly to her, not the
foundations, God forbid.
And then the ACLU testified that they had, made a payment plan with her and that she was going to pay. And then all of a sudden she stopped paying. And when they reached out to find out what was going on, she claimed financial hardships. And then Elon Musk had made donations in her name, I believe, just to the ACLU, because he also has a relationship with them.
The ACLU seemed so shady, though, because they were involved with that op-ed piece in the Washington Post. So the whole thing was created in order to bring Johnny Depp down, get lots of people to buy the Washington Post. And it just made me so disgusted with that paper.
Well, yeah. And they were saying, okay, so we're going to make sure we publish it on this day because she has a big project the next day. And so then we're going to get the biggest airtime out of it. And just hearing them talk about it, I was like, oh my God. But she never fulfilled her financial obligation. Clearly she paid, I think, $100,000 other than what Johnny paid or something like that. She paid a very little amount to these organizations. And it was great because his lawyers, and I forget who was on the stand, was saying she what did he say? Instead of saying, the children's hospital, he said sick and dying children. Like he was making a point of being like, you're stiffing sick kids. Like, what piece of shit does that?
A real piece of shit.
She is unbelievable. That's what it was. She made the demands before getting the restraining order. And when then things started getting weird, that's when she went to get the restraining order. And it was so unnecessary because he was actually traveling, not even in the area at the time, because he was doing, I believe, his Hollywood vampire tour. So he wasn't even in the state. And she's like, I need a restraining order.
She was already starting her case.
She allegedly called the paparazzi or whatever to come witness her walking out with her, filler bruise on her face or whatever it was. Let me see. Oh, and the last two things I wanted to talk about. There is a video. I don't know what year it's from, but she looks very young. But there is a video of Amber Heard with her friends and her sister at a pool. And they're talking about how Amber Heard and Whitney, her sister, got in a physical altercation. And they were talking about, so it's showing kind of a history of them. And the lawyers also brought up that I think they didn't show it, but they referenced a video clip or a picture or something of a day after Amber was allegedly abused by Johnny, that Whitney and Amber were replaying the punch, play punching. And he's no abuse victim would ever do something like that. No, you don't replay the most horrific parts of your life like that, like a joke. Yeah. So I don't know if they're inferring that maybe Whitney and her got into a physical altercation and they were making fun of it or what. And then
so strange. Some of the things she brought up where it was what?
Yeah, no, it was bizarre. I think that was pretty much the highlights, if you will. And we already talked about Kate Moss, so that's exciting.
That's going to come up next, hopefully.
I want to see her on the stand because it'll just be interesting. And the other thing we didn't talk about, when going back to psychology of thing, is how she's dressing like him.
Oh, yes. Very interesting, isn't it?
So crazy. And I'll put pictures if you're on the YouTube. So if you're watching, you'll see it. But the one is so obvious. It's literally almost the same exact dark gray suit with a blue undershirt. And it's bizarre.
It'd be funny if she showed up like Captain Jack Sparrow on Monday. So speaking of what's next, this trial is supposed to last 5 weeks total. And the fourth week ended Thursday, May 5th. And then, they're off for a week. Heard will return to the stand next Monday, giving evidence when the trial resumes. And after Heard is finished, her lawyers will continue to present their evidence, calling the remaining witnesses to the stand. Both sides will then make their closing arguments before a verdict is considered. So we still have some time.
The juiciest part is going to be when Johnny Depp's team cross-examines Amber on those.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait.
I literally am going to be like, don't bother me. This is what I'm doing.
This is our Super Bowl. Get out of the house. We're watching this.
I want to see her I want to see her reactions. I want to see how she explains things, because there's so many of these, like, I got beat the shit out of, and then there's pictures the next day because they're a public figure. Like, do you think pictures aren't out there? You're not that good. Oh, that was the funniest thing. We're leaving. I'm leaving. I'm done. But there was a TikToker that was like, I'm really into makeup. And like was talking about how she claims to be this, makeup artist and color theorist, and because she's so good at hiding bruises, right? But he's like, but then she's coming into the courtroom with like the shittiest.
Yeah, seriously, it's really bad. Almost like I think maybe she's trying to make it look bad so that people won't believe she would be that good at making bruises. Because I'm like, why does it look this bad?
I don't know, man. It's insane. Oh, and then the other last little tip, I was just looking at my notes. There's this YouTuber. It's like TikTok. It's like at @just_TUW or TJW. They said they're a drug counselor, and they were doing a side-by-side with Elaine talking about how much MDMA Johnny supposedly did. I think that's the one where Amber was like, I don't know, he took like 8, he took 10. I don't know. There was 2 left, whatever. She was like stumbling about the number.
Yeah.
And this person was like, this is such lies. He's like, let me tell you from a professional standpoint, you literally cannot take that much MDMA and not die. Because what's happening is that your internal organs will basically cook itself. Because your heat would rise so rapidly. And if you were to try to drink water, that you would basically drown from the inside out. He's like, it's actually physically impossible to take that much MDMA and survive.
Wow.
So I thought that was like a very interesting tidbit. So
remind me next time I pour a pint of MDMA. We're learning so much about drugs in this trial. We're like, wait, what does that mean?
Trust me. Oh, but okay. So like I said, there is so much more that we won't get into. I mean, I think we covered a lot.
Yeah.
But there's so much. If you want the detailed stuff in the stories and like all of you got to just go watch. So Law and Crime Network YouTube is pretty great. They don't have, like, I started on Court TV, but they had commercial breaks every 10 seconds that it felt like torture. Like the same song on, and I was dying. So Law and Crime Network doesn't do commercials. They'll like randomly do like a YouTube promote, like a YouTube has to like refresh it kind of thing. But it's not
I do
bad.
the independent and there's no ads. It just goes to the screen showing the seal, in the courtroom.
Yeah, no, it's the same. But sometimes, and maybe it's me because I have to pause and come back. And sometimes when I do that, it makes me
because you're pausing.
So yeah, so there's a lot of different places. I just would not say Court TV because they have way too many ads. It's obnoxious. But yeah, go watch it. It's all on their YouTube's past days, full coverage.
And clearly we're obsessed for a reason. It is so good. And we will stay on top of everything. We have another episode to bring you next week about another case that just happened recently. But then I'm sure we'll be right back to Johnny.
Yeah. And kind of just like a side note here, I don't believe Brittany or I are like hardcore. I've never even seen all the pirate movies. I literally
never seen
one.
Any.
Like I'm not a ginormous Johnny Depp fan. Have I always loved him? Yes. I've always like kind of looked at like but he's not, I don't know. We are not those crazy fans is what my point is, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, his crazy fans are just standing by him. And it's like, no, I think that we look at things from like a realistic point of view and saying like, well, this person seems very genuine. This person seems very not genuine, whether the sex is a male or female or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't care. I just was interested in watching. I watched the one in the UK, and it just, if you watch even one day, you see that the case is, you can just see it. Anyone that's on her side, I feel like, is just friends with her because it's obvious here.
Or they're not watching and they're just listening.
That's
to
true.
Clickbait is my theory, because some of the articles being written are very much like what she's saying is fact, not like she's saying this, but it also, not giving both sides. Because it's interesting, right? Because Me Too is projected us into a place where I think people are now almost scared to not believe the woman.
Yeah, but I mean, they're gonna bring some more witnesses out for her side, so she's gotta have some friends that are gonna vouch for her. So we'll see. Maybe our opinions will change. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. I doubt it, but maybe.
But until then, be safe
and trust your gut. See you next time.